Okay, so we have Siman Shin Chaf Hey, 325. Nachri Sh'asam Malach Ba'ad Yisrael V'Chav Beis Seifim. A non-Jew did work on behalf of a Jew, as we know that from the Torah, a Jew is not allowed to do certain labors on Shabbos. From the sages, we're not allowed to have a non-Jew do things for us. And even in the case of this is one interesting case where there's a rabbinical on a rabbinical, because you would think that only on a biblical commandment you wouldn't. Then there's a rabbinical enactment on that you can't have a non-Jew do it for you as well. But it applies, generally speaking, even to rabbinical commandments of Shabbos, that you also cannot have a non-Jew do it for you. And although there are certain leniencies involved when it comes to to rabbinical prohibitions versus biblical prohibitions and having a guy do it for you. Anyway, and there are 22 subsections that we call them as the Seifim subsections, yeah. Paragraphs, sometimes they call it. Aleph 1. Muter lezamin nachi lebeisi lechel ime b'Shabbos. One is permitted to invite a non-Jew to come to eat in his house on Shabbos. Even though it's forbidden on a festival, because we are worried that one will cook extra food for him. Like will be explained in 5:12. Did I get it right this time?
Explained over there, the license the Torah grants to cook food or perform other forbidden labors on a Yom Tiv applies only for a Yid and not for a non-Jew. So the Chacham felt the need for a safeguard.
Right. But on Shabbos you don't have that problem. Why? Because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos at all. Is that the reason?
So you're not scared they're going to break Shabbos to do something for the non-Jew.
Right. So whereas on Yom Tov, since you're allowed to cook already for yourself, we're afraid you're gonna cook extra and you're not allowed to do that. And you can even put food in front of not just that he's eating with you, but just he's coming and you're feeding him. And even though you don't have an obligation to feed him, Mikol Makim still. So what's the nafkamin of that? Even though you're not allowed to feed him, Mikol Makim still since because of the ways of peace, we are allowed to. We do provide for all poor people, including non-Jewish ones. So it is as if you are obligated to provide for him.
So we're saying, so the mutter afilu litain mezainis lifnei nachri b'vadei. So it says, Taka, you're not obligated to feed him. So we're talking about that this is hula, because in contrast, as we said in the previous Siman, Sif Zayin, that you're not allowed to provide food for an animal that you're not responsible for feeding. You're allowed to feed your animals on Shabbos, and you should even before breakfast, before Mazayin is found davening, you should feed them. But if it's not your responsibility, it's not your dog, it's not your pet, etc., then you're not allowed to.
So if you're obligated to feed somebody, so fine, I see why you're allowed to. But in this case, basically,
Shabbos. So we're saying still now on Shabbos. So I'm not obligated to feed the guy. So then why should I be allowed to serve him? Why should I be allowed to serve him food? Even when he's a guy alone.
This obligation that we have to feed them is considered an obligation. Also in this respect, it's considered an obligation. Okay, very good. Base and you are allowed to put food for him in the courtyard, even though we know that he's going to take it outside.
Which, by the way, the note says, and we'll see soon how there's bedafka food and not other things. Other things are different, as we'll see in the next sif.
Okay, so
Later.
specifically food, because
Later in the Sif.
so meaning he's saying in general you're not allowed to give him stuff in the courtyard because he's going to take it outside, and now we know that you're not allowed to cause somebody to do a non-Jew to do a forbidden act.
And the whole context of the Siman is that
Right.
a guy
Okay.
doing stuff.
So you're allowed to, and why?
So hold on. So first of all, it will take it out of the courtyard of the public domain of Carmelis. Says Taka, the guy will be performing the forbidden labor of transferring an article from one domain to another. Nevertheless, that's not the Jew's concern, since the non-Jew is acting for his own self-interest and is permitted to transfer an article from one domain to another on Shabbos. He's allowed to take things from Rishos to Rishos, and it's for himself. As you'll see in Tafnam Dalid, Sif 9, on the Kuchas Acharin, to that section, which also says this ruling and focuses on the halachic issues involved.
Okay, and that's interesting, and that's why he adds, I guess,
Right.
and
And that's all provided
that he's allowed to eat it there. Because if he's not allowed to eat it there,
then forcing him to do it.
I mean,
and then
even though he's taking it out for his interest, but it's not really for his own interest. He's taking it out because you're making him take it out. If he's allowed to eat it there, and then he decides to take it out, fine. That has nothing to do with you. As far as you're concerned, he could have stayed there and eaten it. Very good. The mamish still, you should not put it mamish in his hands. Why? So he should not take the picking it up. How would you say akira? The means like the picking it up. And when it comes to carrying on Shabbos, there's two things: there's the picking it up, and then the putting it down. So, like for example, there's different laws. What if two people do it? What if one person picks it up and another puts it down? Because in order to really properly do the full labor, biblically speaking, you have to pick it up, go to the other domain, and put it down. So in this case, but at the same time, rabbinically speaking, you're not allowed to do even a part of a malacha.
I was thinking uprooting, upheaval, but there's Google Translate has
it's like
displacement or uprooting.
It's like laker is to uproot, but it means
to uproot, exactly. So
it means picking it up. You're doing the picking up part.
Displacement is what Google Translate says, which I think goes on Badafka Rishus. Displacement. You're moving it from one place to another. Yeah. So the akira, I think that's cute. But anyway, so yeah.
So Elosh Hanachri Yitfil Miyadei. So you don't, but now here's the thing also, is if I'm holding something and you pick it up, I didn't do anything. You did the picking up. If I put it in your hand, I did the putting down. I'm the one who did it now. So therefore he should not put it into the hand of the non-Jew. Right? But rather the guy should take it from his hand. That then it is the non-Jew who is doing the actual act of picking it up. And needless to say, that you're allowed to do it if you put it on the floor or on a table or something like this. You put it down completely rather than you're putting not only that you're not putting it in his hand, but instead of him taking it from your hand, better to put it down on something and then he's picking it up, and that way there's no question that you weren't involved in the
I don't know that there's a question that if he's taking it from your hand, I don't think there's a risk in that. It's just
but
closer
by the fact that he says I'm
right.
putting it.
No, I think
I'm putting in my own 2 cents.
Right.
Ask your local Rav. Putting in my own 2 cents that it would that the best way to do it, therefore, would be that way, being that it's needless to say that's for sure, without issue. In other words,
just so you don't accidentally put it into his hand.
By the fact that he's bringing it up, it would imply that he's trying to tell you best do it. This is the best way to do it, because then there's no possibility of erring.
Well, 2 things. First of all, I would say, even just so that you don't accidentally put it into his hand, even if he's taking it off, I'm holding the plate, but then, he starts fumbling with his bag, and then then it might be, so that way. But from the other side, I would say the Alter Rebbe, it could be, the Alter Rebbe was adding this because I had this thought occur to me, to negate a false havamina being that I might think No, he has to bedavka take it from my hand because maybe me putting it on the ground for him to
It's
take
like I'm putting
is
it,
still like me. Even though it's in my rishus, but
Right.
I'm putting it down for him to take. That's still me doing the akira. So better he bedavka take it from my possession. That way
Right.
it's totally him taking
Right.
it. But either way,
Either way,
the point is, the Alter says no. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You can put it on the ground or the table if you have one available or whatever. And just on that note, a quick whatchamacallit, it actually wasn't on Shabbos, but I think it's very apropos. Still, there was somebody who in Berkeley knocked on the shluchim's door and asked for food. It was Erev Shabbos. She was cooking up a storm, so she went, made a whole plate with chicken and rice and green beans and whatever, the whole bit. Brings him out the plate, and the guy says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm vegan." So you can imagine though, someone coming to your door on Shabbos, you're in the middle of a meal. Okay, I'll make you a quick plate. Yeah, but always make sure to ask him first. Anytime to be like, oh, I'm sorry, was this split chicken? I'm sorry, I only split chicken. Was this Bet Yosef? I only Bet Yosef. You got to make sure that. But yeah, anyway, so now, Aval im ein her shus.
So that, remember, as we said above, all of this is talking. It specifically has to be that he's all that he's allowed to eat it there, right? Aval im ein her shus biyadi lachlan sham. Hashem is merum she efshar lo lachlan sham. V'nikra davar shetzin lachut. So either he doesn't have permission to eat it there. Alternatively, let's say you say here you can eat it here. But it's a large amount that clearly he's not going to be able to eat there, and so it's an obvious thing that he's going to have to take it outside, right? So to him anachi emid b'chutz pashat yadei lifnim sheyadu avanikar hu sheyitzi. Similarly, if let's say the non-Jew is standing outside and he's putting his hands in to take the food. Right, even if he'll take it from you, or you'll put it on a table and he'll and he'll pick it up, right? Even so, it's clear, it's obvious that he's going to take them out. Also leads in lefanov, then you can't even place it down in front of him, whether he takes it from your hand or you put it down on a table. None of that, because why? It's obvious, it's clear that he's going to take it out. Because it appears as if he is giving it to him with the condition to take it out, meaning with the understanding that he's gonna take it out. Even though he's doing it for his own benefit and not for the Jews' benefit, because he's not doing it because you said, hey, I have this extra food I need to get rid of from my house. Can you take it? No, you're giving it for his own benefit. He wants to eat. He's not doing it for you. He's doing it for him, right? Which as we know, in general, the general rule is, like, for example, if like we know the case in the hotel, where if most of the guests are not Jewish, and a non-Jewish person who works there puts the lights on or whatever it is, some other kind of thing like this, right. So it's assumed he's doing it for everybody else, right? And then it's not a problem. The problem is what? The problem generally is if he's doing something for a Jew, even not for a different Jew, but if he's doing it for a Jew, in this case, it's clear that he's not doing. When he's taking the food, he's eating it. He's not doing it for a Jew. He's doing it for himself. Still, still, since that he is giving it to him from his own, this is his own property he's giving him. If we, like the case in the hotel, the difference is it's the hotel's property. He's doing it with his own things. He's not doing it with your stuff. And as we saw before in 307, it makes a difference if he's doing it with your stuff or he's doing it with his stuff. And in this case, since it's with your stuff, you're giving him your property, it creates a problem, even though it's for his own benefit. And he notes.
Yeah, so there's a note on that, just the end of the Shin Zion. So in that source, the Alter Rebbe says Since the Yid instructs the non-Jew to perform a forbidden labor with his own property, the non-Jew appears as the Jew's shliach. That whole concept. Even if the non-Jew's intent in performing the activity is for his own benefit, but still he's doing it as a shliach of the Yid. So see other examples of the application of this principle in Shin Hey and Taf Nun and Choshen Mishpat, V'chasima, subsection 29. In those sources, the Alter Rebbe explains the issue involved is giving instructions to a non-Jew to perform a forbidden labor on Shabbos. In the next sieve, we'll see, however, the Alter Rebbe explains the issue is Maris Ayin. The impression, it's not so much the Shliach, it's actually a Maris Ayin issue. Because Taka, the guy is doing it for himself, but there's a big Maris Ayin issue. Now, what's interesting is based on the reasoning we just said, it's not an example in the Alter Rebbe, just based on the different, you have A, the Yid doesn't have permission to eat the courtyard, or B, because it's a large amount. You can't eat it all. Or C, he's standing outside the Rosh Hashanah and extending his hands. Basically, something that will imply. We said why, especially B. I'd like to focus for a second. The large amount of food, so it's impossible for him to eat it there. And like you brought it up, so it means he'll be forced. He's obviously going to take it out.
Right.
So one such example might be. I was just thinking, maybe one could argue that if you give it to him on not a normal plate, that could be problematic.
If you give it to him on,
If I give it to him in a to-go container that's closed, meaning there could be a nafka mina, I could put it in a to-go container, but the nafka mina being if I give it to him closed versus I give it to him open.
Because if
I give it to him closed, I'm clearly sending the message that
Right.
he should get out of here.
Right.
If I give it to him open with the top there, then I'm saying to him, you could feel free to eat it here, even without words. I'm saying, feel free to eat it right away. Or you could do whatever you want. Or you can take it, close it, and walk away. But then it's on your choice. Meaning, when we give food, we should make sure to do and such. Don't give it in a Ziploc bag. Don't give it in a baggie.
Right. I mean,
I think
I'm imagining too. It would also depend on word, and this is the interesting thing in Shabbos where wording can make a difference, right? Where because let's say you give it to him in a closed clamshell, right? But then
you say, right,
you tell him, look, here, there's a chair and a table here. Feel free to sit and eat.
then you're good. Then you just
Right.
saved yourself. But if Chatz v'Shalom,
Right.
you don't say anything, it could be problematic.
Yeah.
So so make sure to
And
say it.
that's one of the
and-
interesting cases where on Shabbos, because you have this a lot on Shabbos, different things, where words, words in and this is a general a rule in Judaism. We see
Declaring
Judaism,
intent.
not just the people
Declaring
saying,
intent
it's
is
about
huge.
actions and which it is. It's actions are very important, but it's about speech. Speech is so important. For an example being like there are many who have the custom from the time of Plag HaMincha, which is the earliest time that you could accept Shabbos, until you're ready to accept to take Shabbos on, until the Zman or whatever, that you don't say good Shabbos to people. See, Guten.
Yeah.
Why? Because
I always heard it was after you daven Mincha. I didn't realize it's from the Zman.
It's even from the Zman really, because from Plag HaMincha you can technically accept Shabbos. If you were to then say, what do you call it? Say do Kiddush Shabbos for you. So say,
you know what I'm thinking of? I'm not thinking of Erev Shabbos. I'm thinking of Shabbos afternoon. There's a concept, Kabbalistic concept, after davening Mincha, not to say good Shabbos, because you're on a higher level of just plain good Shabbos. It's now Rivin Derivin.
Yeah.
So there are those that don't say good Shabbos after davening Mincha on Shabbos afternoon.
I did hear that thing of I did hear that thing of not saying not saying good Shabbos. Where did I hear it from? I don't remember. It was a woman who told me this too.
Nice.
But
anyway, but what you're talking about, you're talking about
being more educated than men is coming to fruition.
Magid Dvar Yaakov.
Yeah, but she said I heard a thing, but I don't think she gave me the reasoning. But anyways,
Right.
it's interesting because that's
that's I remember seeing it inside. But you're talking about Erev Shabbos. You're talking about Erev Shabbos
before Shabbos comes in. I think it was Rabbi Oberlander who was teaching us that part. But this thing, there's a minhag, people say a guten and not Why? Because saying good Shabbos, you have to specifically have in mind that you're not accepting Shabbos, that you're not being Mekadesh Shabbos. Why? Because what's Zechira? Even though Zechira, Zachir Tima Shabbos, is like to mention, right, Shabbos, and that's called accepting Shabbos. So fine, we do have the official what do they call it? When they call it what's the English word for nusach? I forget. There's a fancy word for that. Even though there's a technical what do you call it? Liturgy?
Yeah.
Is a liturgical liturgical
Nice.
zach was mezagin, right? But the chlal, there's the inyan of zechira, so you can technically do it without saying those words. Why? Because anyway. So we see words make a difference. Actually, going a step further, we see in Yiddishkeit, we see that thoughts make a difference. As a matter of fact, one of the most important things in the Torah is Shema Yisrael, right? Which means, like Chassidus explains, contemplate, O Israel, on Hashem's oneness, and then the Ahavta, and you should, which is you're not even, and then you shall love. But we're not even talking about speaking. We're talking about this is thinking. So, but on Shabbos specifically, there's many things that hinge on how you put something. How do you tell a non-Jew to in the cases where you're allowed to hint to, where it's better to hint to a non-Jew? What's called a hint? What's called a command? So speaking is very important in Judaism. You got to be very careful with our words.
Right. And Stam, while you were explaining that, I quickly looked up the Shabbos afternoon mincha. So I don't know where I saw the Raven thing because it's not what I was able to find right now. What I was able to find actually is a different reason, and Rabbi Goldstein, Yaakov Goldstein, has it on his website, and he actually quotes that Rabbi Groner says that the Rebbe actually followed this minhag, did not say Good Shabbos between Mincha and Ma'ariv Shabbos day, and the reason being because Moshe Rabbeinu, Yosef HaTzadik, and David HaMelech all passed away during Mincha of Shabbos. So actually, in mourning of their passing, we don't say Shalom to each other.
Which is a very interesting concept, being that on Shabbos there's no Avelos.
Yeah, but yet
right?
still there. It's very fascinating.
And not only that, to the point that we know that on that Yud Shvat, which was on Shabbos, that the Friedeker, the previous rabbi, passed away. Yeah. Right, and obviously this was something with the closest of the Rebbetim was completely distraught until after Shabbos. Not even between Mincha and Ma'ariv, he didn't show any sign whatsoever of mourning,
even emotionally.
So right. It's very, but okay.
Fascinating. But anyway, ask your Rav what your minhag is. But either way, different things. There's definitely a concept there. But yeah, our wording matters, and so declaring your intent when it comes to Shabbos can make the difference between whether I just did something mutter or usher. Did I just make this guy my shliach?
And actually, what you're thinking can also, because for example, if let's say you didn't say your intent, there are cases where like for example with muktzah. With right things you're not allowed to touch on Shabbos because you have no use. If you intended for them to, that's not even a verbal thing that you said it, although sometimes it's better to say it, whatever. But if you just thought I'm going to use this for that,
right? Am I picking up the shofar because I want to hold it on Shabbos and I want it, because I want, or is it in my way and I'm moving it out of my way?
Right. And you're not saying, you're saying, okay, I'm picking up the shofar and moving it out of my way because it's in my way. Just that's what your intention is, and that makes a difference.
Right. The other week we had the problem because the shofar was I had a couple of shofars in a vase, actually sticking out of a vase, and it was on a windowsill above where the Shabbos Lechter were. And we're sitting Shabbos Friday night, and we're like, what is that smell of burning? What's going on? It's something, we had just turned the ovens off. It was right at the candle lighting. Like, I don't know, maybe something in the oven still, but it's off. I don't know. And then we see it. The shofar is melting. Like it's burning like nails, and it smelled like burning hair, burning nails.
Yeah.
And Pasha, there's a scorch mark now on my shofar.
Yeah,
on the edge of my shofar. But yeah, we went right away. I picked it up and moved it.
Okay, it's not because
right, exactly. But it was very clear that my kavanah is I wanted to get away from the fire, not because I decided, what, the shofars will look better on the bookshelf as opposed to the. But if it wasn't the fire, let's say, my kavanah matters. If it's because I decide, what, I think the shofars will look better over here, I'm not allowed to do that. That's muktzah.
Right.
If my kavanah is no, it's in the way of, let's say the fire or the windowsill, I don't want the shadow. It's in my way of something. That's a totally different kavanah. It doesn't even have to be said.
I need that space, or I need there to be nothing in that space.
Yeah, whatever it is. So yeah, totally makes a difference, even kavana. All right, Gimel.
Okay. Gimel.
Gimel.
Even if, but now before we were talking about the non-Jew standing outside with his hands inside, but I feel even he's standing inside. You can only put food in front of him. This is all that they allowed you to do. It would make sense that he's going to eat them in the courtyard.
Food he could eat in your courtyard.
Right. But another object, he's not going to eat it now. So obviously he's going to take it out because he's not what he's going to do. I don't know. You're going to give him a piece of luggage. What is he going to do? Eat it in the courtyard? Eat it in your house.
Eat it. You can say eat it. Use it.
Eat it.
You give. Can I borrow a comb? He's going to go comb himself right there in your courtyard. No, he's going to take it home. Like
right. Also, right. Well, it depends, because if it's your comb and he's borrowing it from you, like, hey, can I comb my hair? Because the key word to me here is shederech leitzion, something that
but
would be usual. Because, for example,
that's a small minority of people who are going to comb right there. Most people are going to go take it to their bathroom, to their own mirror, do whatever.
Because
like if they're walking,
love dafka. If it's a guy who lives down the block from me. And he comes, hey, now he's by my door. He's in my house. He's sitting in my house. And he notices here. He goes, hey, can I borrow your comb a second? I can give him a comb to borrow.
Okay, but then he's using it in your house. That's
right. Why? Because in that situation,
I'm talking about a situation where it's at your door.
No, so that's what I'm saying.
Right. Context matters.
Yeah. Shederech leitzion means and the same object could be, sometimes it's the way to take it out and sometimes not. Is the situation such that it would be normal for him to take it out, or is the situation such that it's not going to be normal for him to take this item out? Because he is giving it because it looks like, and here's where what you said before in the note, right? Is that it's not so much that it's a shlichus, but it looks like a shlichus. It looks like he's giving it to him in order to take out. When do we say this? When the article belongs to a Jew, right? Like we said before, it makes a difference whose item it is, because if it's your item, then it looks like you're making him a shliach, you're making him a messenger to do something with your item. However, articles belonging to a non-Jew you can give to the non-Jew. Because in that case, not that it doesn't look like he's giving it, but even if it does look like he's giving it in order to take out, there's no problem there. There would be no problem giving it to him, even if you know he's going to take it out. Because it's obvious he's not taking it out for the Jew, but rather for himself. Because the object does not belong to the Jew. So therefore, even let's say it looks like you're giving it to him, and it's the kind of thing that he's probably going to take out, and it's obvious he's going to take it out, etc., etc. It doesn't make a difference. All those problems the whole problem is, and this is where the reasoning is so important, is that it looks like shlichus, right? However, if even there is no problem with shlichus at all in the first place, then there's no, you can't have then you don't have a maris ayin on it. It's like a double jump. First of all, it's what's okay, and it's gonna look like no, it's not gonna look like, because you're giving him his item. So even let's say you did give it to him and you knew he was gonna take it out, even that it wouldn't be a problem, and therefore there's no maris ayin on it. And even if you say, right, befeidush specifically, right, clearly, do your tasks with your items. Mutter, it's allowed. Like it's explained there. I'm guessing the note will leads us to where to go.
It just says where it's going. 307.
But in either case, it's not. It's here. You go do your work with your items, which that's completely allowed for him to go do his work with his items, and he's not doing it for you, and there's no problem there. However, that's in all these other cases, if you put it down or he's inside or whatever it is. However, in the case where he's standing outside and putting his hand inside, then it's a problem. Then you can't put even his things because you still do have a problem. Because remember, what's the whole problem? Why is there no problem? Because since you're giving him his item, it doesn't appear as if you're sending him on a shlichus. However, what if it doesn't? What if it appears that you're giving him your item, even though it's his item? What if it appears like you're giving him your item? Now you have a problem again. So also, if he's standing outside with his hands inside, then also you can't even give him his things that the person who sees that the Jew is giving it to him in that fashion, he will assume that it's the Jew's object that he's giving it to him. However, if you're putting it in the courtyard where there's not where there's no observers, and the observer who sees him just sees him coming out of your property with an item in his hand, so then he's going to assume, the assumption will be he's taking his own item out of the Jew's house. Whereas if he sees you giving it to him, or he's putting his hand in and he sees you taking it from you, then it more looks like you're giving him your item. Omikol Makim still.
Just before the Omikol Makim, as a note that added also the fact that apparently the footnote bringing in Shin Zayin, that again brings the shliach element. That not only is the Maya sign that it might be mine, but also me giving the item to the Nachri really looks like I'm making him my shliach. Versus the Nachri taking the stuff. That's, there's a balabatishkeit. It's very interesting how human behavior tells a story. Body language tells a story, and that's what halach is saying. There's an afkamina to the body language. You giving it, first of all, there's more sign that because it looks more like it's your stuff you're giving to him versus he's taking his own stuff or whatever. And secondly, it looks like you're making him my shliach. You're like, here, take this and go do.
Right.
Like, that's a problem. Versus in the first paragraph, where even if you say go ahead and go do your stuff, you can even say that when it's very clear that the stuff doesn't belong to me.
Right.
Even though I'm verbally saying, I say,
there's right. It's a very.
I'm saying, Shelcha, your stuff.
Yeah, the Alter Rebbe uses a very specific language there. Right. Take your stuff and do your work. It doesn't say you can say take this.
Right.
There's
take the shovel and go dig a hole. Take your shovel and go dig a hole. Okay, because it's your shovel. Okay. So it's not making my stuff. It's not my stuff. It's his stuff. Fine. So now, Kamakim.
Also, however, so you're saying, wait a second. So if that's the case, if the whole thing of what it looks like is if you're giving him in the chutzner, it looks like it's his, and if he's taking it, it looks like he's mine, then who cares if it's really the Jew's item, since there's really no problem here. And the whole problem, even when it's a Jew's item, is maris ayin. It's what it looks like. So if that's the case, who cares whose item it is? Let's say the same thing also by a Jew's item. That if he puts his hand in, you can't give it. If he comes in, you give it to him because it looks like it's his item, even if it is your item.
No, I think here it was saying, not even if you give it to him, but if you don't even leave your house. The guy just goes into the Nachri goes into your yard, he takes the shovel and he leaves. He's taking it himself.
What? In which case?
Before the Masha Ein came. So it's not that he gives it to him, he puts it in the chutzner.
Right, but
and then meaning the Nachri
right.
takes it by himself.
We're saying that we're going back to in the courtyard. So in other words,
meaning there's not even an exchange to be seen.
So that's what he's right. So that's what he's answering here. What he's answering here is the question of this. If remember the whole thing in the first place is only a problem of Marisain of what it looks like. Right. If that's the case, why differentiate any time between whose item it is? If he puts his hand in, it looks like it's your item, whether it's your item or his item, right? We've established that. Right. So why don't we say the other way around also? That if it's in the chutzner, whether it's your item or his item, it's fine. Why are we being stringent and saying no? Even in the chutzner, only if it's his item he can take it, but if it's your item he can. Why? So now he's going to answer why. That Even that if it's your thing, you're not allowed to give it to him, even in the courtyard, even in the house. Why? Because Shema Yivoda Emes L'Reim V'Yachshaduhu Shenas like Deilitz Bishvilai. Because with his item, the truth, like they say, the truth always comes out, and then the truth will come out, and they'll find out. For a little bit later in the week, a guy comes to his house and says, "Oh, Ivan brought his shovel here again," and he's like, "No, it's my shovel." Oh, time out. Aha! So he gave him his item, made him a shliach.
Meaning they're gonna think, oh, you left your shovel out for him on purpose because you had a job for him to do for you.
But meaning when the truth comes
because again,
out,
it's not an issue for him to borrow a shovel from you. The issue is if he's gonna do it for you.
Like he's doing your work. Okay.
So just because he came to your yard,
the only reason it's okay is because in truth it's his shovel. Okay, but the difference being, if it's really your shovel, you're going to find out that it's really your shovel, and then retroactively you're going to say, wait a second, last week on Shabbos, I saw Ivan go out of his house with his shovel, and he sent him to do work. Whereas if it's Ivan's shovel, that truth won't come out because it's not the truth, because in truth it's Ivan's shovel.
Meaning, so then there's no concern that you're thinking, oh, that Ivan took his own shovel and did a job for Reuven. But if he's taking Reuven's shovel, there's still the concern, even if the truth is that Ivan took Reuven's shovel to do stuff for Ivan. Himself. But we're worried people will think then there's still a case of Maris Ayin that maybe they'll think that no, he did the job, he took it to do a job for Reuven. Now, fascinatingly, so this note then brings up, you see the Kunshas Achren to Reish Nun Beis, which rules leniently when a Nachri performs a forbidden labor with his own property in the Jews' Rishus.
Right.
So meaning if Ivan takes Ivan's shovel and digs a hole in Reuven's property, that's allowed. In contrast to this, where Ivan's taking Reuven's shovel, but he's going to his own property.
Right.
We're worried that there's Maris Ayin that they'll think he's doing it for Reuven.
Right. But
if Ivan's doing with his own stuff,
the Maris Ayin hinges on the fact of at the end the truth will be known. Well, whose object this was.
Yeah, but not that we're worried. Not that the truth will be known who he did the stuff for.
No, because
we're just saying that the truth will come out who owns the property.
It's almost like a funny thing because that we're saying people are going to make the assumption on. They're not even going to ask.
Right. We're still worried that people are going to come to a false conclusion.
Right. But so what's going to happen in this case? In this case, they see Ivan walking out with a shovel on Shabbos from your house, and they say, "Oh, Mistama, it's Ivan's shovel."
Right.
Mistama, Ivan went and got his own shovel. But then they're going to say, "Wait a second." But on Shabbos, then they're going to see later. They'll come to his house and they'll say, "Oh, Ivan's shovel is in your house." And they'll say, no, it's my shovel. But then they're not going to clarify the rest of it with him, and they'll go, okay. Right. So that's the case. Yeah,
he's doing work for Reuven. I just find it so fascinating, and I don't really get why the Kunshas Achren he's Mako for him doing it in his own property. I mean, that seems like it's so much worse. If a guy's digging a hole in my property on Shabbos, it's so much more, or mowing my lawn on Shabbos. Wouldn't it be even more Marasayan that he's my shliach?
Right.
I don't get it.
I guess it comes down to a question of what sort of things will in other words, there's the perception that the people are getting right now. And that's the perception that they're going to have. Finished. Done, right? And then there's certain things that their perception can change later. That something that they see can make them come to a different conclusion. In other words, there's some things that we say the truth will come out on, and there's something that we say that no, the perception will remain.
Well, people aren't going to get to the bottom of
right.
So resting on their
what's happening
assumption.
Now? What's happening right now? The actual actions that's being done. We're assuming that the perception will remain, which in a way can make sense. I'll tell you why. Because the action that's happening now happens when? Now, right? And therefore, maybe we assume that the perception is what it is now. The object, on the other hand, remains. Meaning, even if both people, God forbid, if both the Jew and the guy passed away later, after 120,
Right.
then the object is the shovel is still around. 300 years, by the way, his grandson still has that shovel. So on the object like the shovel, we perhaps worry about what future perception is going to be. Whereas on the action happened and it was done. The action doesn't carry on in the future, even if you say the whole remains, whatever. But the actual action is only now, and maybe therefore we base the perception on now. Whereas on the other hand, the shovel, which is an object that's going to remain, we look at it differently, and we say that being that the perception can change, the truth can come out on it, so to say. So therefore, maybe that's part of the logic behind differentiating in that way.
The different the naf community. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
On the other hand, if it's the item of the non-Jew and the truth comes out, okay, we're not worried the truth's going to come out because there's no problem with the truth. The only thing the problem is when the truth brings up an issue. If the truth is going to come out that it's his item, so what's the problem? Okay, Dalid. 4. Even if the article belongs to a non-Jew, however, it was given as collateral to the Jew, right? Like to secure a loan or something like this. Dinai kechefet shel Yisrael. Then its law is as if it belongs to the Jew. Why? Because collateral is in his possession.
So there's a whole note on this, not huge, but I'll do it quickly. But for a person holding an article as security has a claim of ownership over it, like Mental just said, and it comes from Gemara Kedushin above Metzia. The Hillel David questions the Alter Rebbe's ruling, stating there's a legal difference between a Jew's claim of ownership over security entrusted to him by a Nachri and security entrusted to him by a fellow Jew. The fact that the security remains the property of the Nachri is reflected in the fact that the Nachri does not have to perform a kinyan, an act of acquisition, to reassert his ownership over the article if and when the Jew returns it to him. But if you see, apparently in the Chikre Halachos, that provides several plausible resolutions for this question. But it's a good question. But they're not.
So meaning is his basic question is, being that the guy doesn't have to make a kinyan, right? The non-Jew does not have to make an actual acquisition or whatever.
Means it never leaves his rishus, so the Jew does not have a claim to ownership.
Or even let's go a step further. Let's say in a sense it leaves his rishus or whatever, right?
A little bit.
But being that the problem here is maris ayin, it's what it looks like, what it appears like.
Right.
Anybody seeing him walk out with it,
like it says,
will probably assume that he reclaimed his collateral. Not only that, even if they see it by the Jew again later. So maybe he took out another loan, and now it's collateral for a new loan, whatever it is. But so I think that's the question basically, is like, what's the right?
But clearly the Alter Rebbe holds that no, even though technically you're right, there's no kinyan that has to be done. It doesn't really leave the Nachri's rishus. But the fact is, it's enough in the Yid's Rishus when it's something that's a pikadain. When it's collateral, it's enough in the Yid's Rishus that there's a problem, that it has to be treated as if it's a Yid's item. Yeah. Because like you brought up, maybe from the Maris Iron perspective, people will just assume, oh, he took ownership over it. The guy didn't pay back the loan. It's the Yid's now. It's a pikadain. It's his. They're not gonna assume that it's if the Yid is handling it, they're not gonna assume that it's someone else's stuff. They're going to assume it's the Yid's.
Right.
When it comes to
and here's what's interesting. He goes a step further.
Right.
right? Even if the non-Jew already redeemed the item, he paid back the loan already, right? Came mashma b'simination base gabi mechira, which is this is how
Which,
it would seem from 252 when it talks about selling and
yeah,
right. I
and
feel
ration of base.
even before Shabbos, he already paid back the loan. It's his thing before Shabbos.
So over there, the ration of base says it's forbidden for the non-Jew to take the merchandise on Shabbos, even in a city surrounded by an Eruv. Rationale is that observers may suspect the sale was concluded on Shabbos.
So meaning
Because
if
that's
right, and here we say like vafilu im yichid makam manachim ba'idiyim techashusil nichshav mashkante ad lamachir shevet misham. Even if the non-Jew, if he set a place in here, I'm here's the sale. What's it called? Here, I'm leaving it here for you.
Stay here behind my garage.
You come in, it'll be right in the corner. Go in the garage on the left corner. You'll see it sitting right there. Right. So then it's still a problem. Also, he's not allowed to put it for him to take on Shabbos. Mishum Maris Ayin. So I guess so. That's the case. By the way, so that's the case. By selling. Brings up like if I sold it to you, or not to you, if I sold it to a non-Jew, and then I said, okay, and he pay you. Okay, yeah, I see you PayPal'd me. Perfect. And listen, you'll come tomorrow on Saturday. You'll see it'll be I'm leaving. I know you're not going to be in town till Saturday morning, but I'm leaving it for you now in the garage over here. You come from the side door, take it. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe is saying that is similarly the same thing. The non-Jew loan, what's it called? He comes here. Here's your money. But listen, if you don't mind, I can't take the thing right now. I'm driving my sister's car. I'm going to come back with my pickup truck to take it. No, you can't, even though he already redeemed it, because since the problem is what it looks like, people are not going to know these details. All they're going to know is came and took this and took this this item that they know that was that you had as a collateral.
So what's interesting is that there's a note that brings up what's this nafkamina of setting that he puts it in a specific place and that the guy will then take it from there, because since the Yid designated the space for the Nachri, it's as if he gave him that place temporarily. So thus the Nachri will be taking the object from his own domain and not the Jew's domain. So mamash a major nafkamina in what's happening here. But the Alter Rebbe was saying, even though there is this major nafkamina, which seemingly would what's called the problem, but the problem is it's not about the Rishus really. It comes back to the Alter Rebbe's Chachma. It's not about the Rishus. The Alter Rebbe's whole issue with this is Marasayan. And so even though you're right, when it comes to Rishus, you just solved the Rishus problem by making it his own Rishus. So he's not taking it from your Rishus, but there's still a Marasayan issue with the Pikadain, and so that's problematic.
Right, and this goes back to the same sort of string of logic like we had before, of there are certain things that we say will become clarified, and there's other things that we say, no, the normal way is that it won't become clarified. Meaning they're not going to ask you, by the way, what was the deal with the thing? And then you'll tell him, oh, I made him a rishus. No, we assume there's certain things that we say the truth is going to come out, and there's certain things that we say that people are going to go with their assumption of what happened. And so in this case, we say the truth is going to come. On the one hand, the truth is going to come out. They're going to know that it was, or it already came out that this is collateral that you're holding for the non-Jew. On the other hand, the fact that you set aside this thing, that won't come out, and basically, like you say, the people will know just enough to be dangerous, and
just enough to be problematic. Just enough. A little information is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, if the non-Jew was a strong man,
a man of force is how they translate it.
Right, meaning he's like a paritz, or like back in Poland, the landowners, and he took a loan from the Jew. What's it called? But or let's say not, or he's a guy who's a gangster or whatever.
He's an intimidating fella. Yeah,
right.
I mean, just it's known that he's a guy.
Right. You're gonna have problems.
You don't say no to Charlie because he's gonna.
Right. Like, wait a second, this Jew, I paid you back your thing. Like, now you're not giving my thing back. And in that case, not only can you be lenient, afilu lo yichid lo yimakim, even if he did not designate a space for him, even if, let's say, he did not designate a space, let's say he didn't even know the guy's going to come.
So meaning there is a problem with Rishus.
Yeah, the guy, what's it called? He's the this intimidating fellow sends you the PayPal for your loan back before on Friday, and then on Shabbos he shows up at your house. Okay, I came to take my thing, and in that case you can even what's it called? Here, put it for him to take mamish right from your house, as if it was with all the rules before, like before, if it was his own item. And also when in a case where where we're worried about that it's going to be of the ways of peace.
Meaning, similarly, the fact that we're makel here is also because of Darkei Shalom.
Right. Kegain, for example, Nachri Shechola. For example, a non-Jew that was ill. So
meaning not just out of fear, but also
he's going all the way back up then to the food thing. Yeah, to even your item, meaning he's saying that the whole Maris Ayin thing. In this case, you can be Mekilon. Like for example, if he's not a non-Jew's not feeling well, and he needs which by the way, which is interesting because the same would hold true for the case of a Jew. If a Jew was meaning it comes to equate the case the case of another Jew. Let's say down the block there's a Jew who is ill, right? And he needs food. You are allowed to, in the first place, give a non-Jew the food to bring to him. Yeah. And you're allowed to say, bring it to this directly, without even hinting. You're allowed to clearly say that's one of the cases where Amir L'Nachri is allowed.
Right.
Is when you have a Tzair Gadol, somebody sick. In a case of somebody sick is a specific case. And that's why in certain other cases
we're going to get into the rationale in a second.
Like if somebody who's not sick needs a coat. You're allowed to send the coat because when it's freezing cold outside, everybody's considered like sick.
Because we're on it now, I'm just going to because we're on it because you brought it up. But basically, yeah, in a couple lines, we'll see this in a second. Because shlichus is through a nachri, it's just a shvus. So as the note brings up, it's not a scriptural forbidden labor. It's a rabbinic decree, either because it resembles the forbidden labors or it could lead one to commit a forbidden labor, but that makes it a whole lot more flexible. Right. Just like, Marisayin is also whatever, not to cast it away, but to say, so it makes it more flexible when something like this, Darkei Shalom, or if the Yid's sick.
Which is very interesting because generally speaking, this thing of telling a non-Jew to do something is very stringent to the point where you have a shvus de shvus. You have a rabbinical on a rabbinical, meaning you're not allowed to send a non-Jew to do a rabbinical prohibition even, besides there are certain leniencies that apply to that. However, when it comes like for example, for the need of a congregation, right? For a congregation to do a mitzvah, we can be lenient in the case that it's a rabbinical prohibition, right? We just had that on the community Rav test with the whole fuse situation. The fuse in the shul blows. Can you have this one do it? Can you have that one do it? And it depends on the electrical system, because some electrical systems there are elements that are rabbinical and there are elements that are biblical. So depending. Okay, but in the case even of a biblical prohibition for a sick person, we're allowed to in the first place, even not on a rabbinical, even on a biblical. One of the cases which we can't be so lenient in other cases. For example, for the need of a mitzvah.
Yeah, but hold on. No, but just to clarify, guys, and they don't get confused. It's not because you're not doing it. It's not saying that if someone's sick, you can go do the.
No. We're talking about Amir L'Nachri.
You can have the Nachri do it because that is.
But generally, you can't.
Rabbinical.
Generally, you can't have a non-Jew do even a rabbinical prohibition. And there are certain leniencies that apply to having a non-Jew do a rabbinical prohibition, but that you can't have him do a biblical prohibition. In the case of a sick person, it's the point where you can have a non-Jew do even you can have him light a fireplace. Again, this is not something you can do. This is something you can have a non-Jew light a fireplace for somebody who's sick. Now, obviously, when we're talking about sick, we're not talking about somebody's at risk of dying. If somebody's at risk of dying, you yourself, you go do what you have to do. That's so that's not the case we're talking about. If we're talking about somebody, for example, you have somebody who's sick, and their heat goes off, and they have a fireplace, and we're talking about his life is in danger, right? So if you can look outside and find a non-Jew to do it, but so you tell him to do it. But if you can't, and mamish, not only that, or alternatively, if the guy is so sick and he can die and there's no time for even this, that it's going to make a difference the time that you take to look for somebody to light it. No, then you just light it. Why? Because we're talking about a life is at stake here. It's a whole different story. There's different levels of sick. We're not talking about that level of sick. We're talking about the person who's sick, that from his being cold, it's not like an immediate but he's gonna get sick, and it could eventually, the bad things. So in that case, you're even allowed to do it yourself. If it's mamish, a life-threatening thing. But if someone's sick, not like immediately life-threatening, you can have a non-Jew do it. There are, even if it's biblical, and there are other cases where you're allowed to only have. We won't get into every case, but there's other cases where you're allowed to have them do only rabbinical things. But in general, you're not allowed to have a non-Jew do not rabbinical prohibitions and obviously not biblical prohibitions. So, also Daki Sholem, right? So, for example, so here we're saying in the case where a non-Jew is sick, just like we said before by the poor, that just like we consider all poor just like the Jewish poor, and therefore it's considered as if you have an obligation. The same thing, just like if a Jew is sick and you can send him through with a non-Jew, you can send him stuff. So too, if another non-Jew is sick, you can send him with another non-Jew, you can send him food. Meaning either he's coming and he's sick and he's coming to your, I need, what's it called? I'm hungry, I'm sick, what do you call it? I need food. Or to send him through another, with a shliach, through a different angel. Yeah. But who had din l'tzedek mitzvah? So too, for the need of a mitzvah. For example, to bring out chametz, leavened items, which are prohibited on the Passover holiday. So to bring that out from your house, right? Like, let's say, for example, it's
Shabbos Pesach.
Shabbos Pesach, yeah.
You find a bagel.
Does Pesach ever come out on Motzi Shabbos? I think so.
Yeah.
Now,
How many?
Shabbos,
you don't remember Shabbos? Right. You don't remember Shabbos day erev Pesach having to daven early and having the kids early, and then flushing challah down the toilet, and the toilet getting stuck, and having to quickly go down.
So, anyways, let's say Friday you got rid of your chametz, right? We only keep enough for the Suda. And then all of a sudden, Shabbos morning, it's coming the time you have to give the chametz, and I have chametz here, and I don't have a way to destroy it, whatever.
Remember, back then. I would say
didn't flush.
I would say I have a maybe even better example, as it's happened many times to many families who, because Pesach is the beginning of spring, so weather starts to change. And for those that have central air conditioning and things are just set by a thermostat, so the air conditioning hasn't gone on. So it could be Shabbos, Pesach, that your air conditioning goes on for the first time in months.
And all of a sudden the crumbs come flying out.
And a whole bunch of Cheerios come flying out because your little child put them down the vent. I've heard of this story happening multiple times. Watching Pesach, and it turns on and plummets.
Right, all of a sudden, right in the middle of Pesach, all of a sudden a nice sunny day.
Chametz flying around your house, literally flying around your house, flying chametz. So check your vents when you're cleaning for Pesach. Whether it's your car or but especially
by the way,
Shabbos,
you know why this happens?
Chametz is flying out.
You know why this happens too is because in that time in middle before Pesach, very often the weather is such that you don't have not your heating on and not your cooling on. So your
Right, so
vents
totally,
aren't
the
your
vents,
vents
right,
aren't yeah, they're
totally
sitting.
empty. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, so yeah.
Yeah. So for that too, for tzayich mitzvah,
Right.
we don't worry about this whole Maris Ayin that we're talking about here.
Right, as it says in
Yeah.
Tafan Dal.
Like it says, in 444. Because the this whole thing of, in the first place, not just the Maris Ayin, the whole thing of a non-Jew doing a prohibited thing for you in the first place is a rabbinical prohibition. And nowadays, especially considering that some say that there is no true public domain, right? But rather only a Carmelis, which is not as
It's a rabbinic.
yeah, which is
Carmelis
only
is
a
rabbinic.
rabbinical issue. It's not a proper public domain. Like it explains in
So-
345 coming up.
Yeah, so pause right here. Hold on a second. Because the whole note to get into this, which I think is important, especially because a lot of people hear this with regards to, can there be an Arab in certain places? Can't there be, like in New York and stuff? And it gets very, so I think this note is very apropos. There are two opinions quoted in this source that's cited in 345. According to the more lenient opinion, a place is not deemed a public domain unless 600,000 people pass through it. The Alter Rebbe concludes that the prevailing custom follows this opinion, although he adds that a God-fearing person should follow the more stringent view. The prevailing custom is used as the yardstick for the present ruling. There's great controversy amongst contemporary authorities as to whether an Eruv may be constructed around major metropolises today. Since their public thoroughfares are generally 16 cubits wide, an Eruv would be considered invalid according to the more stringent view defining a public domain. Meaning to certain streets, like a wide Eastern Parkway, you just can't do it. It's just too wide. Furthermore, there are many opinions regarding how to count that 600,000 people that must pass through an area before it could be classified as a public domain. Furthermore, many other factors in addition to the number of people are taken into consideration when determining whether a domain is public or private. Thus, large cities could be deemed public domains according to scriptural law, even according to the more lenient view. And it's a fascinating thing that today's day and age, the cities we have, for the most part, did not exist. In history, there were some cities that had tons, and it's fascinating. Incan cities in Mexico that had, 1 million people, and that was such a unique thing. Now we have city after city, so many people living in small, tight spaces. There could be a lot more deraisa reshus harabims, not just the God-fearing person, being more machmir, but even according to the lineage view, deraisa reshus harabim. So
right, but also there's a difference between let's just accept the opinion that it's only a Carmelis, and we'll make an Erev and carry on Shabbos. Whoa, hang on a second. Versus, why? Because it could be only rabbinic, whatever it is.
No, but what I'm saying here
No, but
is that
versus in this case, where there is a need for a sick person, or we're talking about you're going to have chametz in your house, which is a clear biblical prohibition. Right, so this note is very, very. It's a very important note.
It's that because the Alter right now is saying that it's really only a shvus, so it's totally a tzarech mitzvah, it's mutter. But what I'm saying is,
right, it's not a blanket. It's not a blanket thing. We can now go and apply to everything.
In most cities nowadays, that's not the case. It would just be a shvus. It would not be a shvus to shvus.
Right.
So don't try to be pointing to this Alter Rebbe and say, it's just a shvus to shvus. The Alter Rebbe said there's no real reshus harabims today, which I've heard that countless times. People saying there's no real reshus harabims today, and I'm like, that was 250 years ago. That's
A
not today, man.
That's A, and B in this particular case, v'hitiru l'tzayich mitzvah. In other words, all these cases, these aren't just blanket things that they allow. Right. These are very specific things that were where they allowed leniencies in this rule right here, and they apply only to this rule right here. Is that in the case of what do we call him? The strong man, right?
Intimidating, yeah.
Right, and by the way, intimidating doesn't just mean a guy who's like, hey, yeah. There's rules in terms of what do we call intimidating or not. It means somebody that could do you harm. Or that it would come out and it would be a huge scandal sort of thing. And remember, back then when we said it would be a scandal, a Darkei Shalom thing, it would be a scandal. We're not talking about here in the United States where the guy's going to give you a bad review on Google. We're talking about the Ukrainian farmers would come with pitchforks.
Hold on, Darkei Shalom is different than the Ula.
Yeah.
He's saying it's the same thing applies, but it's two different things.
Well, no, Darkei Shalom before he mentioned. Well, there was two. He meant by Darkei Shalom that he mentioned specifically. He's not talking about Stam Darkei. So that's part of Alam. Darkei Shalom is, for example, a non-Jew who's sick. We're all because we have the same responsibility for him. Technically, it comes down to we have the same responsibility for him, like we have for a Jewish sick person, just like we have responsibility for the non-Jewish poor, just like we have for the Jewish poor. Right, so in that specific case, as well as, like, for example, for chametz, for the need of a mitzvah, for the need of a biblical mitzvah, that in these specific cases we're lenient regarding this specific thing. So, like you said before, it's not a blanket thing that can be used. Even though that's part of the reasoning behind it, the fact is that the leniency granted is those specific things in this specific case.
Context matters. Hashtag context matters.
Mikol Makim still still, even though, like he said before, in these specific cases, we're lenient to the point where even however,
even in these cases,
even in these cases, it's better.
Still, you shouldn't put it in his hand.
Like we said before, either he could take it from your hand and you not put it in his hand, or even better, if you can just put it down, and better, it's in the courtyard than him putting his hand in, etc., etc. If you can do it the better way, then even if it's his things, and even in these cases, you should try to be do the best you can to be careful in all of these things.
Just by the way, it's 10 o'clock. I just wanted to check with you. Yeah, what's timing today for you?
well, I mean, when they don't come on for a while, I'm still good for a while.
Oh, you're saying go till Chaim has to use it. Okay, sounds good.
I mean, yeah, unless you have to jump out earlier.
I got a lot of work today, but not anything that's timed that has to be.
Well, like Overland said, you have to steal the time for title.
Exactly. So right now, major
theft going on. It's like a highway robbery.
Yeah, it's not even a ganav; it's a gazlan, just straight up.
Yeah, not even
I'm not wearing a mask.
Like, yeah,
there's no masks. That's just.
And by the way, I really enjoyed his. In other words, putting in context what he said is like, just, stealing time from this and from that. And he said, when it comes when the same person who, what's it called? Oh, but I can't write. In the meantime, a YouTube video, he'll watch for 5 minutes, and he'll go on let me just jump on the face. And you see, even people at work, they do such stuff like that.
I need my mental health break.
At work, really, it's actually stealing time to do that at work.
No, but I need at work. I need my mental health break. Yes, I need my mental health break to learn a bit of Shulchan Aruch.
Right. So, and by the way, in some, it's the truth is it's not a problem if that's the understanding and that's how the culture is in that work and that's how people do it. Yeah. They do a chunk of work and they stop for a minute, they break for 5 minutes, check their texts, whatever. Everybody, including the boss, does it. Fine.
I remember back in the day, there used to be a thing, a lot of people who didn't smoke were very upset because people who smoked got more breaks. Because people would, because they didn't want people smoking inside, they would give people who smoked more breaks so they could go outside and smoke. Yeah, that's smoke breaks.
See, that's why I do this. That's how I got off smoking. Right. How did I get on smoking? I wanted breaks.
There you go. Just get more breaks. So I'm saying is now more than smoking, the addiction is my phone. I need my phone break. I got my 5 minute, social media.
Right. So Rabbi Oberlander's point was those 5 minutes instead of YouTube video, you could have just learned the next 2 seifim.
Yeah.
And by the way, to connect that with a story from, I think it was
or Mendel, hold on. This could be the YouTube video.
Yeah. And just right, use this YouTube video.
This is on
You know,
YouTube.
you know what?
This
Watch
can be used.
YouTube. Yeah, but anyway,
story?
there's an interesting story from David Leib Morozov. I think was David Leib. It was either Shalom and David Leib. He was unknown like Lamdan and like had a very wide knowledge and both Hasidus and the revealed parts of Torah, Halakha, Gemara everywhere. And somebody asked him once, how do you know so many things? So he said, I learned for 5 minutes. What do you mean you learned for 5 minutes? He said, you know the 5 minutes you're waiting on the line for the cash register. You know the 5 minutes you're waiting for the taxi. You know the 10 minutes you're on the bus. You know the 5 minutes. What's it called? And then he pulls out. And this pocket he had like a mimer, and then he pulls out from this pocket he had like something like a nigla, something pulled out. He says 5 minutes. Learn for 5 minutes.
I will say that something I love about smartphones is that I don't have to carry Svarim and Dvar
Right.
Malchus and stuff in my pockets. Right. I can pull it out and anything. It could be nigla. What I have my list of things that I'm learning currently, whether it's Mishnayos for the Shloshim, whether it's the Masechta for the year, whether it's Chassidus, Chitas, Rambam, and I could pull it up right now. You know, Shulchan Aruch Al Harav on Chabad.org.
Right.
So much.
There is a certain where do I have that? I always have here. You see, there's a certain benefit of this.
The physical,
which by the way, this is something that I always carry this around with me. My it's people learn around Gimel Tammuz. I actually learn all year. It's a little bit.
The thing of they say every Lubavitcher should have a mimer and a sicha up their sleeve. You literally have it up your.
I have it up, yeah. Only it's my pocket, whatever. But I always carry this is my office one. So this one stays over here, right? Nice. And I'll give you an example when I'm working, right? And the big boss says, hang on a second, I got to check something. Let's break for 5. Boom. And I have one in my kapata pocket also, and I have one in my car. But at 7, I go all year. I go just even when I have a few minutes, I'll do one ice. Okay, I'll tell you what's good about this. What's good about this versus even though the smartphone can get you so many sperm is that this is I have yet to get a WhatsApp notification on this.
Nothing that's tracked. There you go.
So that's
I will say
there's that. I am old school. I do. There's something I like a book. I like a printout. I like reading on paper. I'm old school.
I just had last week when I was shooting the photographing about him in Roeville. So Rabbi Rosenfeld asked me, he said, so what's the benefit, like the cameras you're using versus a phone? And I told him, like, you're talking right. If you buy today, top of the line, the latest iPhone 15, that might even better than the cameras I have.
Not only that. For any practical if you're shooting for for a billboard or something, it's one thing. You want a very high definition for anything that.
What I'm saying is the cameras that I have are not the latest and greatest. Compare that to the latest iPhone. You're right. But those phones are probably better than the cameras.
Right, but I'm saying especially the Chnas Sefer Torah. Where's it going on? Mostly internet pictures. Right. Which how much definition do you need already for that? Maybe they'll print out.
I'm saying just bichalal.
Yeah.
The difference of even if you have something that's they're both the same quality. They have the technology to make the phone the same quality as somebody. But I said, but Lamaisa, the way it's in my hand, it's a different feeling. And as the example, I said, for example, a sefer. Yeah, there's a lot of learning I can do on my phone, but there's something about having the sefer in your hand, the physical paper, that it's not the same. It's just not the same. When I have the camera in my hand and I'm moving the lens, even remember the digital cameras where you're pushing a button to zoom. When I'm moving the lens to zoom and focusing, it's just something different.
Yeah.
So I think that's the
and by the way, I think to a certain degree, and I know more people than just you who do that and they enjoy that. And part of it is it's part of their creative process.
Yeah.
It's part of people have developed over time a creative.
I need a certain paintbrush.
For catching a picture a certain way. But my creative process is got the zoom. Oh, boom. Oh, there's the picture. Boom. Right. That's part of the process. With me, part of the process is the
physically. Yeah. Hold the paper in
that and this. If this is part of the process too, the creative process.
The post. But I'll say again, back to our marshal of but a thief, you use whatever tool is available to you. And I think that's a part of it where
Yeah,
people are like,
100%.
no, I'd rather learn out of a sefer, or rather say Tehillim with a Tehillim.
Well, I'll give you
But
another
if it's
example. Let's use the same example. Okay, you didn't bring your fancy camera, and all of a sudden there's some very, very photo perfect moments that you as a photographer I need to catch this. Oh well, I can't use my phone. No, fine. So use your phone because that's what's going to work the best right now.
which, by the way, that's exactly why I spent more money on the phone I have. I was going to buy a cheaper phone. Then I'm like, you know what? No, I want to have something with a better camera because there are moments like that. And even when I'm on a photography job where getting my camera set up, I can quickly grab it with my phone in a way that it's about quickly grabbing it, which quick grab these moments, these learning
minutes. Same thing here is right. When you have a moment, right, to learn Terusay Yemnusay, then you have to. Okay.
Moving right along. On that note.
Mutilach live mashkin l'nachli b'Shabbos imhu malbush. Now that which so that which we said before, that the collateral of a non-Jew that you're not allowed to give it back to him on Shabbos, besides for only in those very specific things, right? If it's a strong man, etc., etc. However, even not if it's a strong man, and even none of those situations, if it is an article of clothing, and he is going to wear it and bring it out wearing it, then it's fine because this is not a commercial activity, not business. V'gam b'Yisrael mutar b'inyan zeh, ima Yisrael tzarich lov she'b'Shabbos. And even with a Jew, you can do the same thing if he is going to wear it on Shabbos.
Quick note, which sees Shin Zion again, which talks about a similar ruling with regards to borrowing food or drink that are necessary for Shabbos.
Okay. Wait a second. So you would think we're only talking about if the non-Jew paid you before Shabbos. But now what if he brings you the money on Shabbos? When he takes the collateral, mutter gamkein, it's also fine. As long as he does not do accounting with him.
A detailed accounting. That's what how they try.
Yeah, Yachshav is a cheshbon. He's making
calculations.
Calculations. Meaning, wait a second. Yeah, even if obvious it goes. Listen, it goes without saying you can't touch it. But let's just say he has the money, and so meaning you can tell him, okay, listen, put the money there. We'll think. What's it called?
We'll check it after to make sure it's enough.
But even if let's say the guy's holding it, right? The non-Jew's holding the money, and you'll be like, let me see what you. No, you can't do that.
Right, the non-Jew's ready to. The guy is he's ready to count it out. Is it 300?
Let me show you.
How much is 18% on that? No.
It was this much, right? Now,
just leave it.
Put it over there. All right.
Nice.
Why? Because then it's already doing business on Shabbos. The toiv sha'anachri yikach hamashkin ba'atzmai v'leiga ba'Yisrael. Not only, obviously, the Jew can't touch the money. That goes without saying. But not only that, it's better if the Jew does not even touch the collateral. Rather, he says, "Listen, put the money down. Put it on the shelf over there." I don't even know if you're allowed to tell him put it on the shelf over there, but put the money. Leave the money. The article, it's in the closet there. Your clothing is an article there. Go ahead. Why? Because if he brings him the article, it more looks like a transaction. And if he brought him a different piece of collateral, right? Let's say, for example, he didn't pay the loan off.
Swap out.
Right. Either, let's say, he paid part of the loan, and he says, "Listen, so can I take my article and give you a less valuable article for the other half that I still owe you?" Or alternatively, he just says, "Listen, Yanko, it's really coat. I remember I gave you the collateral. I gave you that coat. I can't pay you back yet, but it's really cold outside, and I need my coat. Here, I have my football is not in season right now. I have this football jersey that's worth as much as the coat. I have my Steelers jersey. that's worth as much as the coat. Can we swap it out so I can have my coat because it's very cold? And by the way, FYI, this is a completely theoretic situation because no Pittsburgher worth his salt would switch his jersey for his coat. He would rather keep his Steelers jersey and walk out freezing. So it's completely a theoretical thing. But fine, let's say an Eagles fan. That makes more sense, maybe. So if an Eagles fan says, here's my Eagles shirt. By the way, it's also theoretical because an Eagles shirt isn't worth anything. But I guess it was a cheap coat. So he says, I need to swap it out. It's cold. I need my coat. So so that's no problem. You can do that. You can do the swap, but better, like just like before, it's better. It is okay. Listen, in the closet, your coat's in the closet right there. Take the coat and leave the jersey, and so better not to touch it. Vav. In the places where you can eat the bread baked by a non-Jewish baker, this is very important specific wording because there are three different categories in bread. There's pas akum.
There's a note.
Right, there's pas. Oh, good. Read the note. It'll say it better than I do.
So I don't know if it's saying exactly this, but I'm assuming that that's what it's saying.
No, it looks like it.
Yeah,
We'll complete it if not. But I think this is a better because it goes into the whole prohibition.
It's the background.
Yeah, I think this is better.
So the Chachamim and Avodah Zarah forbade eating bread baked by a Nachri. Nevertheless, in previous generations, eating kosher bread, meaning bread that contains only kosher ingredients and was baked in kosher utensils, baked by a Nachri, commercial baker, was permitted by many authorities because of the difficulty in obtaining bread baked by Yidden. Excuse me, as is clear from the story of the longest Pesach, where it was a Nachri who tried to poison the Yidden the day after Pesach, right? Anyway, whatever. Go see Shulchan, the longest Pesach for more details.
What a great reference, huh?
I'm not getting paid for these. And the authorities agree. The authorities, that's Shulchan Aruch Yerdea. Now, the authorities agree, however, that bread baked by an ordinary Nachri, who's not a commercial baker, generally forbidden. Nevertheless, when a baker's bread is not available, some authorities permit bread baked by even an ordinary Nachri, not a professional. However, even a person who is accustomed to partaking of bread baked by said Nachri throughout the year should endeavor from doing so Aleph for Shabbos and Yom Tov, and Beis during Aseret Yomei Tshuva. A lot of people will suddenly be machmir and insist on only Pas Yisrael. So yeah, that kind of, I think that summed it up nicely.
Yeah. So basically, there's a difference between the bread baked by a non-Jew and the bread baked by a non-Jewish baker. Which, so for example, you see the Schwabel's bread that people eat and that has that has whatever different textures, whatever it is, etc. They may not be Pas Yisrael. Those are called Pas Shel Palter Nachri, or Pas Palter for short. So there are those there are places, or not just places. It depends. There are now
communities.
Being that all it used to be by place. That's how the communities were separated. There was,
Right.
Believe it or not, Bobov was actually in Bobov. Munkach was in Munkach. the Litvaks were in Lita. The Lubavitchers were in Lubavitch. So now in Pittsburgh you have Litvaks, you have Lubavitchers, you have Yakis, you have all different kinds. So it goes by community. So this would apply rather to a place. It would apply to communities, to what your community, what your Rav and your community, etc. How you hold. So in places, in communities that you can eat pas palter, yesh matirim likach imenu b'Shabbos, you're allowed to take. There are those who permit taking on Shabbos from the baker. Afilu pasha sayim, even bread that was baked on Shabbos. If it's a city that most of the city are non-Jews, like we said before, by the hotel, it depends. It depends who's he making this for.
Right. He's living in Paris. There's a guy he knows. There's only kosher ingredients. On his way home from Shul, there's an Erev. So on his way from shul, he grabs a nice baguette for his
Right.
lechem mishnah.
So, because then probably it is baked for the non-Jews and not for the Jews. Which, by the way, another similar situation would be, let's say even most of the city is Jews, but let's say this particular bakery only sells bread same day, does not sell day-old bread. Well,
Right,
and let's assume that the Jews in that city, generally speaking, are God-fearing, Shabbos
just
observant.
Keep it simple. I think just this bakery is known to sell.
Right. No, so I'm saying,
so
I'm saying he's bringing this the classic situation that would be that it's mostly, but I'm saying that it's what it comes down to. Is it clear if it's clear that he's making it for non-Jews, not for the Jews? Because let's say it's known that the Jews don't buy bread on Shabbos, and he bakes less bread on Shabbos because the Jews don't buy it from him.
What's interesting, so there's a note on this. So because it can be assumed that he baked the bread for the sake of one of the majority of the town's inhabitants,
right,
which in this case is not the Yidden. And see similar examples in multiple different Simanim of 252 and 276, 326, and 517. The laws that apply when a Nachri performs a forbidden labor for the sake of both Yidden and Nachrim are discussed in Sif Tes below. We're going to get to that in a few Sifim. But you're right. Here we're talking about clearly, it's clearly done. This action was done clearly not for Jews.
Yeah.
Not for Yidden.
She'oz min hastam. And therefore, there's no, according to this opinion, there's no reason to prohibit it from the based on the rules of a non-Jew doing prohibited labor for a Jew. The gamin l'sareis midin muktzah. And also you would say, wait a second, how about muktzah, that you're not allowed to touch things on Shabbos that don't have a use, and he just took it and made it into bread. Before that, it wasn't bread. We don't have that problem either. Why? Because afilu im haisa kemach isa bevein hashmasis sheim muktzin. Even if it was flour, even if it was flour, when it came the time of bein hashmasis, between the which we won't go into the exact time, but when Shabbos started,
flour or dough, which either way, it's not a completed bread yet, which bein hashmasis is in short between sunset and nightfall, which is when Shabbos comes in. And what's important, why the note brings up why this is being brought, because that's when muktzah starts. Status of articles. When is something muktzah? Depending on what state it's in, is what state was it in during bein hashmasis.
Right.
That's when, because things change, right? So if it was only flour or dough during bein hashmasis, then it's a certain status. If it's already bread during bein hashmasis, then it's bread. So it's not muktzah. But if it's flour and dough, just because it becomes bread after bein hashmasis, who cares? When do we look at when something was? Then it's bein hashmasis. That's why. So it's dough or flour, then it's muktzah. Shehein
muktzah. Like it's explained in 308. Even though flour and dough would be muktzah in this case, generally speaking.
A yid's flour and dough is muktzah.
We don't say that since it was made muktzah in bein hashmasis, it's muktzah l'chol Shabbos kula for the whole Shabbos. Why? Lefisha ein aimrim kain. Because we only say that when we say that about something that was by itself was made that way from when it became dark. Meaning, for example, if I left it before Shabbos, and then it by itself on Shabbos, it's going to become usable. Then I have a problem. The fact that it was not usable during bein hashmasis is only a problem when the item then becomes usable by itself during Shabbos. Why? Because it was my setting it there that made it happen. Which comes very what do you call it, when this is very pertinent, that we're not going to go into it now, because that's whole different laws of cooking and things like that. But there's all kinds of things with cooking, with things setting or whatever.
But that's why the example he brings is not cooking. He has a kokain
right.
near.
Like a candle which goes out by itself after dark.
I think here we're saying ner as in a lamp, meaning so the candle
Yeah.
burnt out. So now the lamp, it's not a burning thing anymore, so it shouldn't be muktzah, right?
Right.
So you could think
But
you
no,
could
it
use
was
that lamp.
muktzah. Right, but since it was
Problem
but
is,
since it was muktzah bein hashmashis, and
doesn't
the
matter
going
that
out
the
happened by itself, it's too bad. You
right,
can't use it. Aval
right.
kol davar shegmar b'dei adam, but anything that a person did the final act. Now, by the way, this is a rare situation because usually the final act you're not allowed to do. So that's why it doesn't happen by. That's why it happens by itself usually, is because we're not allowed to do the action on Shabbos. In this case, somebody did do the action. The hainu the nigmar tikuna b'Shabbos v'naseh the adam. That it's fine. It's fixing. It's setting it into a usable item, a non-mukta thing was done by human hands, right? That he made it fitting for human use. Ain boy mishum mukta klal, then there's no problem of mukta. I feel over vein hashmash is by the in a even if it was not fitting for use during bein hashmash. Why? Mipnei she'eini mukta mimenu daite klal. Bevein hashmashes milihanis mimenu b'Shabbos. Because what he doesn't like, remove his
attention. We're
Yeah.
talking about kavana, we said before, right? So
Right.
he doesn't divert his attention from benefiting from this thing, this article on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Your attention matters. Your kavana matters. What you're focused on matters.
Right. Right. So essentially, the technical meaning of muktzah is that you removed your mind from using it.
Yeah. So now it's like I wasn't planning on using it for Shabbos, so then it doesn't have a use for Shabbos.
Doesn't have a use.
So you have a plain brick.
Right.
Could become muktzah, or if it's a door stopper, a gate stopper, has some sort of a paperweight. If you had in mind that it be a paperweight, but if let's say Shabbos day you're doing kiddush outside, and you need some.
And now you're right,
but you can't go grabbing rocks and
because you didn't have that in mind yet.
You didn't have it in mind by Benish Moshes. If you have it Benish Moshes, let's have in mind. So come Sukkot, make sure you have in mind any of the bricks and rocks just in case I need them.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I'll use them.
So in this case, when it comes to the wheat and the flour and the dough like JJ Hecht said, the dough, the American boys are like a dough. The Friedrich Rebbe said, the American like a dough, but you just have to know how to knead them properly. Anyway,
knead them nice.
Yeah.
Need
NEED and KNEAD. Yeah.
Nice.
Right. So since he didn't remove his intention from it at all, why? Why? Because it was in the hands of the non-Jew to do it, meaning even though I'm usually, if it was my dough, so it becomes muktzah. Why? Because I removed my mind from it because I'm not allowed to do anything with it. However, the non-Jew is allowed to do something with it. So therefore, ein lo din muktzah klal b'Shabbos. It does not have the law of muktzah on Shabbos at all. Being that he has the ability, and indeed he's allowed to. He's not Jewish. He doesn't have to keep Shabbos. He's allowed to bake it on Shabbos, and he's allowed to make it fitting even on Shabbos for consumption. And therefore, the laws of muktzah don't apply to that. And since it's ready to be used by this non-Jew who owns it, so therefore it's permissible for everybody, especially in the case like we said before, where he's not doing it for you, he's doing it for the non-Jews of the city. So that's the one opinion.
We're saying that it's hanachi ba'olav, that he's its owner. So the note brings up why we're saying that, why the author is saying that wording specifically is because in Shin Ches we talked about how the status of whether an article is muktzah or not depends on the status of its owner. And so because the baker is the owner of this stuff, so it's his stuff, and it's not so it doesn't become muktzah. He's the owner. He doesn't keep Shabbos.
Right.
So it's fine.
Yeah. So there's no problem then. Yeah, that's one.
Now-
That's one opinion. All that was one opinion. V'yesh eimrim, and there are those that say shaloi amru kol davar shegmar b'di adam ein ba mishum muktzah. That we and there's the other opinion says no, we don't say that. The meaning that which was said above, that anything that a person can finish,
Which is muktzah.
which is finished by a person, there's no problem of muktzah. So this other opinion says no, we don't say that. Ella b'davar shat cholos melechis tikunai kedei la'asoyse yiroi yohai dekaidim b'Shabbos v'nigma b'Shabbos. Unless the beginning of the work was started before Shabbos and then only finished on Shabbos. Kegoin nachishis chalasis klima erev yom tov gemari, like a non-Jew started to make a vessel before Shabbos and then finished it on Shabbos, or from the beginning of Yom Tov and then finished it on Yom Tov. That in that case, ein by mishum nailad. We don't have the problem of a new entity, as we know on Yom Tov, right? There's what's the whole thing Be'esh Nil the Yom Tov, right?
There's a note.
An egg that's born on Yom Tov, Malavein Levein, what's it called? Right? What's the difference between that and you don't remember that whole thing? This is a Hasidus thing actually. There's the Rav said that an animal that comes out of a I think the story is an animal that comes out of a treifa.
Mm-hmm.
An animal that comes out of a treifa, you're allowed to. It's a kosher animal. You're allowed to shecht it. And you're allowed to eat it, even though the mother was a treifa.
And pakua, but from a treifa, not a kosher animal.
Yeah.
So you still need to shecht it.
No, not ben pakua. Ben pakua.
You don't even need
It's
to
a little bit different. It depends on because it depends. A ben pakua, I believe, depends on when it's born. I mean, on what stage it's holding in the thing.
in the uterus or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. So
here you're saying it's being born as the treifa, okay, whatever.
But
that can still be kosher.
Or it could be a different question.
Treifa,
Or it could be a different question. It could be a question of if, I don't remember exactly, or maybe it was born on Yom Tov, whatever it is, right? But Rav said that's okay. But he said that an egg that comes out on Yom Tov you're not allowed to use. So they asked him, what's the difference between the two? And it says Shasik Rav. Rav was silent. He couldn't answer them. V'halacha k'meisei. But the halacha is like him. It's used as an explanation of that the Rav saw this thing in a way of chachma, but not in a way of bina. So even though he couldn't explain it, he knew it was right. And then later on, Rabbi Bar Bar Chana explained that he was taka right. Why? Shezem muchan agav imei. Because the other one, the animal was already ready by its mother. It was an entire being at the time it was born already. Meaning even when it was in the womb. We're talking about a stage where it's a fully live being and can survive on its own, which the egg is a new tulda. So that's the whole thing of tulda b'yomtiv. Of in other words, if it's a new entity, it's a problem. So in this case, we say by a non-Jew who began making it and then finished it on Yom Tov, it's fine. Why? Because it's not considered a new entity. Why? Because it was finished through the hands of a person, but that's only when he started it beforehand. So this second opinion says this doesn't work. Why? Because so too, if you put bread in the oven, right, and you started cooking it, even bein hashmashes, right? So there's not a problem of muktzah. Why? Because you're fixing it. You're making it. Avo pashat cholos melechus dikuna dikoch nasis roi. Dynamics of yasa haisa b'Shabbos yesh b'mishum muktzah. In this case, the non-Jewish baker, it was still flour, it was still dough. He didn't begin making it before Shabbos. It was mamish sitting there, flour, and therefore we don't say this
during Ben Hashmashes.
Right. So the fact that human hands are going to complete it on Shabbos, according to this opinion, doesn't work. It doesn't make it non-muktzah unless the beginning of its of the labor was started before Shabbos already, and it was only finished on Shabbos. Right?
So
So that's the first opinion says, being that if a person, rather than it's going to get finished by itself, a person is going to finish it, then there's no problem of muktzah. The only problem of muktzah is if it was by itself. The second opinion says no.
So if it's flour or dough, according to the second opinion, that's not a completed utensil. It's not a completed thing. So that's problematic.
Not right, because it's still not usable. Meaning, I won't act like I know the case of the keli. Well, there's a note for that, so maybe we'll hit that note 31. But presumably he's talking about a keli that you can technically use already, something like that, and
it's just the concept of nailad. The important concept is that what's nailad is because you have to have in mind what's muktzah is you have to have in mind I'm going to use this thing on Yom Tov. If it doesn't exist yet, then I can't have that in mind. It doesn't count. You can't have in mind something that doesn't exist yet. Okay, if it doesn't exist yet, that means it only came to existence during Yom Tov. So that means I didn't have in mind to use it when Yom Tov came in at Bein Hashmashos. But in this instance, since the unfinished utensil belonged to someone who doesn't have to keep Yom Tov, so he was able to complete fashioning on the Yom Tov. So he's not considered to have diverted his attention from this utensil. Because there's no difference between Yom Tov and not Yom Tov for him. So the finished utensil is not considered naila. It's only brand new born.
And in this case, he wasn't right. He wasn't planning on starting it. He only started it on Shabbos. By the bread.
Well, it's about the completion, really. So the question is, what state is it in at Bein Hashmashos? If it was ready or not. Is it ready or not? If it's not, it's muktzah. If it's ready for something, it's not muktzah. So with bread,
but according to the second opinion, even if it's not completely ready, Bein Hashmashos, it's fine so long as it was started to get ready to be. Meaning, if the non-Jew put the bread in the oven Bein Hashmashos and it wasn't ready till after Bein Hashmashos, it's fine.
No,
because
he says,
yeah.
Hold on. He says,
meaning he doesn't consider making the dough part of being ready.
It's muktzah.
Right,
if
but
it's flour
okay,
or dough,
but look above.
second
Look in the
opinion,
parentheses.
it is muktzah.
Look in the parentheses. V'chein pashe hischele afaisa, hainu shenosna b'tanur mi ba'edim after Bein Hashmashos la'yisruya adayin ein ba mishum muktzah. Meaning,
even though it wasn't finished.
That's very simple. He's not considered making the dough part of its finishing. He's considering the baking the finishing.
The baking.
So
meaning
even if he
put it
started
in the oven, before Bein Hashmashos,
okay, but hang on a second. But if you put it in the oven, it's a problem. You're not allowed to put it in the oven, and it's going to get finished on Shabbos.
Oh, that's because Makah B'Padish, I'm not allowed to bake on Shabbos.
Right, but a guy is allowed to bake on Shabbos.
Right, so then it's not.
So when do we say it's not muktzah? So when do we say it's not muktzah? Let's say right before this man, a guy put it in the oven. A non-Jew put it in the oven, and it's still not even edible. When Shabbos came in, it's fine because he started the finishing act. He began the finishing act.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's funny. He began the finishing act, but
okay, he started the finishing.
So
act.
the same.
He started the last stage.
The same thing he's talking about finishing the keli on Yom Tov. He started the finishing of it before Yom Tov. And he finished it on Yom Tov. On the other hand, he didn't start finishing it when it came in Yom Tov. It was completely unusable, and he did not begin the act of making it unusable. In our case.
But now,
according to the first opinion, it doesn't make a difference. According to the first opinion, he can completely do the whole finishing on Shabbos. According to this opinion, no, we only say that when he began the finishing before.
Or this third thing, that's what I say. Let's finish this second opinion. Hold on, there's more. Yeah. Kernels of grain, Bein Hashmashos.
However, if it wasn't flour, but rather it was wheat,
Grain.
sheaves of wheat, or sheaves of wheat or grain,
Because
and
grain
when it was
could be-
not made into flour.
Right.
So the problem is once it was made into flour, you have a problem. If it's still grain, then there's not an issue. And why is
Because
that?
as the note brings up, because grain is fit to be eaten. So they're considered ready for use. It's been a shmashis, you could use them right
So
away.
basically, once you made it
So
into
they're not
flour,
muktzah.
you made
So
it
you have
unusable.
this, there are 3 stages to bread. And according to the second opinion, 2 out of 3 of them are okay. But it's when it's flour or dough that's problematic because it's not fit for use. It has to be fit for use during Ben Mashus, according to the second opinion, even by enough. So if it's totally grain, then yeah. If it's oats, whatever, grain, you could eat it, oatmeal, millet, whatever way you want it, snack on it. If it's flour or dough, it's not even really achila kelev. That's the whole thing.
Right.
I brought up before.
The dog can't
Not
eat
really
it.
achila kelev. So it's not fit for use at all. So that's muktzah, according to the second opinion. Even by nothing.
Right now, technically it's muktzah according to the first opinion, but it changes because if human hands is going to change it, versus if it's going to happen by itself. According to the second opinion, it doesn't make a difference. It's only if he began to do it, if he began that finishing before Shabbos.
Which this reminds me a totally different thing, but this reminds me of how you have like the stage of this thing has 3 stages. And the first and the last are okay, but the middle's not. Reminds me of putting meat into a cholent pot, into a crock pot.
Yeah.
It has to be edible or totally raw. It
Yeah.
can't be partially cooked when Banish Mashal.
Now I have a question.
Because of Bishul.
Let's say it comes time and I have to, what do you have a problem? What if I have a non-Jew put the stuff in my cholent pot?
So now we're gonna say Le'inyan halacha, because yeah, there are these 2 opinions.
Even
like
according,
you said,
even according to this more stringent opinion, okay, so it shouldn't be a problem of bishul. I turned my crock pot on, no problem now.
Oh, yes.
Bishul, and now I have a non-Jew take my cholent ingredients and put it in bein hashmashis.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I saw this happen lamaisa, and we checked it. We had to come up with a quick psak in the moment, and then we checked it with the Rav later. And it was okay. It was good. And what happened was basically it was a Sheva Brachos in a hotel. So both families were spending Shabbos together in the hotel. And we made a cholent. And we plugged it in. And then something happened with the outlet.
Yeah.
It was right before candlelighting.
Like
the
GFS popped or something or whatever. Yeah.
But what's interesting is, so in this case, what's very interesting, so the meat, for example, was already cooked. It was the leftover like roast or brisket from the wedding the day before.
Right.
Meat was cooked, other things weren't. And then we found, it was popped, and then it was Shabbos, and it's already, so it was Bein Hashmashis Baruch Hashem. So we were able to tell him directly, the hotel employee.
Right.
But it was a whole thing of like, what about Bishul? Bishul Akum.
No, you're already right. There's no bishul with it.
It's
right.
cooked meat. It's cooked whatever.
Right.
So it's roy lachila. Everything's roy lachila. Yeah, it's what we call it. There were raw beans, but it's beans. There's whatever. It was like type of beans that were okay. I think it was like canned, so it was technically cooked also. Whatever. It's a whole. But yeah, lamaisa, it was okay. And we've told it was Ben Hashmashis telling him, please go plug this in somewhere else because we can't.
Right.
It's shop. Like
right.
It was also for the whole. This was the only challenge for the whole thing. You could say tzarich gadol.
Well, not just that. And if that's the case, it's a Sheva Brachos also, and whatever.
Yeah, it's from mitzvah.
Yeah,
absolutely. But Lal challenge from mitzvah.
Right. But it's interesting, just because there's certain times when you'd have there's a problem for you to turn on a crock pot because it's not going to be a third done, but it's not completely raw. So if you turn on the crock pot, now you don't have a problem of the you turned on the fire, and you have a non-Jew put the ingredients in. And then he cooked it into Shabbos. He's allowed to, no problem.
Seemingly that's okay because
but there is a problem. There's still a problem. All of this is talking about a baker that did it for other non-Jews. He didn't do it for you. Here he's doing it for you. So that's the problem here. In the case that I'm bringing up, that would be the problem.
No, but the case you're bringing, it's okay. It's not on Shabbos when you're telling him to do this.
But you can't tell somebody. You can't tell him to do something before Shabbos for on Shabbos. There's 2 parts.
Yeah, that's still also not allowed. Right. In the middle
anyway,
of that's still
it was a good try though. You have to admit.
It's been interesting.
In halacha, however, when it comes to the actual halacha, Yesh lahachmir kasvaro acharena. You should go by this second, more stringent opinion.
Which
Elo
again
im
later
ken-
in 517 in Tavkuf Yud Zayin, the Alter Rebbe writes fundamentally the halacha does follow. The Ikar halacha is the first opinion that is totally permitted on Shabbos.
well,
But he states, nevertheless,
it would have to be.
prevailing minhag, the custom is to
Right.
be
No, it'd
machmir.
have to be. Why? Because the next thing he says is El im kenu shasal kok.
Right. The fact that we can,
Unless it's
that
a
we can,
pressing need. Well, if the main halacha was that what was like the second opinion, he wouldn't allow it in a pressing need. And that's
not allowed,
halacha.
it's not allowed. Right.
Yeah.
The fact that we can rely on it means that, yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, however, we should be. It's better. We should be stringent by the second opinion, nonetheless. Unless what's it called? Going to darbe for yefidi. For example, it is a Jew that lives by himself in a village, which, by the way, was more common than you think, because what happened was, but during there was the point where there was, I forget what the line was called. There was a certain line. There was that the Jews were not allowed to. They had to live only in certain parts of Russia and this and that.
Right.
They didn't let them in universities and all kinds of things. One of the
All those
solutions.
Yidden running those kretschmas on the side of the road,
Yeah,
right?
and
By
this
themselves.
is actually from a story that I've been told by a Fabrangan. Now he told it for a different reason, but he said that back in those points, so some of the Jews, what did they realize they should do? They realized that they could they'll buy little farmlands, and they would do like subsistence farming and bartering and things like that. And they can make a living. And then all the people from the different places would hire a malamed, the teacher, who would live amongst them.
Farm.
Like kind of like he'd live like in middle, kind of like where they were. So this kid would walk 20 minutes that way, that kid would walk 30 minutes this
Between
way.
the farms.
And right, and they would get him a little house, and they would give him his parnasa, and he would teach all the kids from the different villages. But in the village, there's no what do you call it? There's just one or two Jewish families living in the whole village.
In today's day and age, you have it much more common by mashgichim. Mashgichim that are going and spending. I just saw on an OK chat, it popped up. You said anyone who's willing to go from Erev Yom Tif, Erev Rosh Hashanah through Shabbos, September 23rd or whatever, $3,000. He needs someone to go be at a cheese factory or whatever. It happens all the time. There's mashgichim who are by themselves in a hotel, middle of nowhere, or on a farm in middle of nowhere, totally by themselves. They couldn't even if there was a yid who lived nearby, it'd be out of a tchum because they're on a farm. There's nothing like. Right. So yeah, I feel like that's the most common modern day example because
of that idea.
Yeah, you didn't live near other. You didn't. But
yeah. Like so,
for
example,
whatever reason,
he lives by himself in a village. He actually literally passed he doesn't have other Jews he can go to ask for bread. Mitzvah, he can do das bris milah, or for example, so that's mitzvah like a circumcision, like a bris. Or for the bracha of amaitzi, meaning he actually needs it for.
Meaning he has other food. No, even if he has other food, but
He
it's a
needs it
mitzvah to eat bread on Shabbos, like we
mitzvah.
learned earlier.
Then we can rely on the first view, the lenient view. Mikol Mokin, still also litin moisla partim of Shabbos. He's not allowed to give him money for it before Shabbos. Why? If you already paid him for it before Shabbos, then he's baking it for you. Now the whole thing that we've said before, the whole reason that makes this possible is the fact that he's not doing it for you. He's doing it for the other non-Jews. And now that he's done it for the other non-Jews, now you come and benefit from it. But if you paid him before Shabbos to make you bread on Shabbos, then he's doing it for you. So you can't pay him before Shabbos. But also, and in that situation, also Shabbos, and in such a case, you would only be allowed to eat it after Shabbos with the and not only after Shabbos, but like we explained in such cases, is when a non-Jew does something for the benefit of a Jew on Shabbos, no Jew is allowed to benefit from that item until after Shabbos, not just after Shabbos, but with the amount of time after Shabbos that it would take to do whatever the prohibition was done. So you'd have to, like, in the amount of time that it would take to bake the bread after Shabbos, you'd have to wait that amount of time after Shabbos before you could even eat it.
V'chol zeh b'fas, and all this is regarding bread. However, it's something that a non-Jew cooked for himself, when it's an item that we don't have the problem of cooking by a non-Jew. Maybe we should do that note.
Which, quick note on that, yeah. As Shulchan Aruch of Mechaber writes in Yeridea, Kufyud Gimel, food that Nachri cooked that is fit to be served to a king is forbidden to be eaten by a Yid, even if it's kosher. However, simple foods cooked by a Nachri, which were not included in our sage's prohibition, which is a lot of people consider like potato chips and stuff like that, and are permitted to be eaten by a Yid, provided they contain only kosher ingredients and were cooked in kosher utensils. As long as they weren't the utensils weren't trafed up, then it's okay. But for example, I had an issue recently in my work in Kashas. It's a restaurant. We found that some of the cooks were not waiting for the mashgiach to turn on the fire. They were turning on the fire themselves. Baruch Hashem, it happens to be, it's a space where most of the food there is ro'il achila, first of all, like without even being cooked.
Yeah.
Like, at least b'diavad, we know we don't have to kasher all the dishes because it's mostly ro'il achila. Yeah. So it's like, and so there's bittul involved
items,
with
so
regards.
there's no
Right.
actual
With regards to the amount of stuff that is ro'il achila and does need to be cooked from being raw to be eaten, it would be batel bereiv in the amount of dishes, so we don't have to go koshering everything. But yeah, it was a big problem.
Yeah. So on those items, ein bahem mishum muktzil devrat kel. Both opinions, all opinions agree that there's no issue of muktzah there. Afilu heim peidish ein necholim chayin v'lo yahirum klal ben hashmoshes. Even if it's fruit that we do not eat raw, and they were not ready at all during ben hashmoshes. Lefisha ein emrim mitayich shehukta ben hashmoshes hukta chol Shabbos kula, because we do not say this thing of because it was muktzah by ben hashmoshes, now it's muktzah for the whole Shabbos. Ella bedavar shemaktzah eisei ha'adam midati u'dechay biyadayim. Besides for something that a person consciously moves his attention from, and he pushes it away with its hands, so to speak. Like, for example, grain that you grinded and made into flour. So the fact that you made it into flour, you turned it into this unusable item. So it's your intention that it's unusable, not to use it until later when you make it, when you bake it. But it doesn't apply by something that's muktzah, not by the own person. Meaning, it's a very good logic here. Why is there any requirement that a person's hands has to be involved in making it not muktzah, and it can't be done by itself? That is when a person's hands were involved in making it muktzah. It wasn't made muktzah by itself. An item that is made muktzah by itself becomes unmuktzah by itself. So in this case of the bread, you made it muktzah. Therefore, you have to make it non-muktzah before bein hashmoshes. On the other hand, an item that you didn't make muktzah, it was naturally muktzah, can naturally become unmuktzah.
Now, just two things. One is that the past tense for grind is ground, which always reminds me of the joke. This coffee tastes like dirt. What do you want? It was ground yesterday. Or it was ground this morning. Anyway, but then number two is, so there's a note that just explains a little bit from Shin Yud, along the lines of what you just explained, but of an example of an animal that was shechted for the sake of a sick person. So a healthy person has now diverted his attention from that animal ben hashmoshes because it was alive. So he was like, I'm not going to eat it. It's alive. So now it's intrinsically unfit to be eaten. Since he didn't willfully divert his attention from it, when it is shechted for the sake of the sick person, person who's healthy can also eat from it. It wasn't that I pulled my attention from it. It's just I can't eat it because it's alive. So,
right.
So similarly, in this instance, since the Yid did not do anything to make the Nachri produce inedible, to make the Nachri's produce inedible, when it becomes edible through the Nachri's actions, the Jew is allowed to partake of it. Like you explained, it's the hands that You know, remind me the hand, Pesha hitter, Pesha also Pesha
Yeah,
hitter,
the
like,
hand that
yeah, the mouth that forbids it, the mouth that, yeah, really.
right. Yeah.
All right.
Good. I think this is a good
10:50.
time because now we have a lot. The next one is a longer save.
Okay.
So
Sounds
yeah.
good.
So tomorrow morning I will be on the road in Mirz Hashem, but maybe tomorrow,
depending, I guess we can